Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi Live Coding. In this episode, I'm gonna share with you some kind of interoperability kind of example that takes advantage of Blender and then Sverchok add-on animation nodes and also a little bit of Python coding. So it's gonna be kind of tricky, not really tricky. This is kind of thing that you might actually found at some point. Let's say you have like a sequence of animations and then you need to somewhat export it in a format that's need to be readable on Sketchfab or on Blender Eevee. Blender Eevee rendering currently doesn't support like a deforming mesh, so you can kind of trick it using simply by kind of like a stop motion kind of setup. So I'll show you really quick the setup. First of all, I will generate some kind of procedural animation using Sverchok, and we're gonna be using the metaballs vector and plug into the origin of metaballs, and metaballs will give you some kind of abstract looking object. So that's the first thing, and this is actually kind of a good start, and we're gonna kind of just randomize it frame by frame. We're gonna do that real quick, and I'm gonna output this guy. There's a metaball, I'm just gonna hide it. Object ID set, actually object ID out. Plug this into that guy. Vmesh output. So we have this. You can see that's kind of not smooth, so I turn on smooth shade. So now we have this smooth shade objects. I'm gonna just turn this into 40 frame or something, and I'm gonna bake it out, changing its data in terms of polygon counts. So this is not something that you can normally export. You can export this as Alembic, and it will work in some game engine, but for things like Sketchfab or Eevee, this you need to kind of trick it. So anyhow, export as OBJ, selection only, animation on. I'm gonna save it on a folder, new folder, and I'll call it blah. So save it there, save this as blah, export OBJ. It's gonna save all the OBJ sequence, and let's check it out real quick. So still working in the background there. So inside the blah, you can see a sequence of OBJ. Now this OBJ we need to bring back into Blender. Blender actually doesn't support multiple OBJ import unless you are using Python script. So it's actually pretty simple because someone already did it for you, and this is one good example I already know. This one allows you to import multiple collada sequence or OBJ sequence. For this one, we just gonna need the OBJ one. So we're gonna just copy the code and paste it into a new blend file. I'm gonna save this first as. Here's what I found on the web for oops. I'm gonna switch Siri off. Okay. I'm gonna save this as interoperability 001. I'll create a new blend file and switch to default. I'm just gonna paste text here, the Python code. So this is gonna import our OBJ sequence, but we just need to make sure the path is correct. File, save as interoperability 2. So this one is gonna be using the Python code. We need to make sure the path is correct. First of all, we need to find out about this blah. Command I in Mac. In Mac, I just gonna actually copy this path. Let's see if I can do this in real time. So users, desktop. I think I just need to paste it here. And the name is name of folder is blah. So hopefully this works. Run the script. It's gonna read through all the OBJ and then import all the 30 or 40 OBJ sequence into the scene. So that's the next step. Sometimes the files gets pretty big, but that's okay. So we got it. If I'm not wrong, we have 40. So we did have 40, and the first one need to be named, I think, just 000, just in case. Okay, so we got our objects. Now we're gonna save it again. I'm gonna switch to animation nodes. Animation nodes. First of all, I'm gonna group all of this guy. Control G. Now we have it inside the group. And I'm gonna switch to animation nodes and turn off auto. So we have 40 objects. We're gonna bring via the objects from group. And now we're gonna kind of play with the idea of turning on, turning off the visibility per frame, so that each of these geometry is gonna show kind of like a stop motion animation. So that's the basic idea. So we have our objects here, 40 objects. I just gonna tap W, gonna loop through each and every object. And I'm gonna create a new parameter, and just this is gonna be a float. This is gonna be our time. So this goes in there. So this is our time. We're gonna basically compare the time and index of the object to turn on the object visibility on and off. So let's do a logic comparison. Boolean logic compare. So if the index matches the time, the results gonna go into this guy. And we're gonna be processing each and every object. So the loop goes like this. And let's check it out if this is actually working. It doesn't seem to work yet. I think our time maybe need to be floor or something. So float math for our time. This one's gonna be floor. So now hopefully you can see something. So you can see there's some kind of movement there. So for every object it's kind of doing something. It's doing it in reverse though, but that's okay for this example. We could reverse the number, but let me check. Well, don't worry about the reverse. I'm just gonna invert our Boolean logic in here, and the result goes into the height. So now you can see it's already kind of working. So 40 frames of this generative geometry that I created in Sverchok and then exported out as OBJ, and now they're kind of doing this for 40 frames if I'm not wrong. So one by one. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're probably like just a slight issue somewhere here. This is frame 39. Okay, so we actually start from frame 0, I believe, until frame 39. So this should be correct. There should not be any gap. Playback. There you go. That's the stop motion animations. Basically just by animating the visibility. If you want to make this work with Eevee, use object transform. For now, just use object transform output, and then you scale the objects on and off based on this comparison between frame and index. So hopefully I explain it correctly. So now for every frame, the object scale is gonna switch between 1 and 0. So you see the object that's visible is actually scaled 1, and now it's all good. Although one thing, the animation is kind of reverse at the moment, so that's keep that in mind. Maybe you need to fix it somewhere here. So let me explain again what's going on. We have a bunch of objects, 40 objects being generated and then already exported as OBJ, imported back as sequence of OBJ, and we have this as a group, and animation nodes kind of operating on each one of every objects, comparing the object's index number, which is between 0 and 40, 0 to up to 39. Comparing it with the frame, you're gonna be able to kind of just make them visible only at that particular frame. And once you're done with it, you can really just bake it out. Remember, you need to bake it out if you want this to work with Sketchfab or Eevee. Once you bake it out, you can actually select all of this mesh, and then you look at the animations, you will see something very clear. So for every frame of the animations, this guy is kind of changing. It has this kind of animation of the scale and the visibility, if I'm not wrong. Let me try to select it like that. I can't really see it. But anyhow, it's you understand it. I think the visibility is now key, and then also the scaling. This will actually work inside Eevee Render. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. This is like a quick example of interoperability using Blender. For stop motion animation, this is gonna be perfect. It could be like a large file, but this is kind of like an alternative of Alembic. You will not get motion blur if you are using this method, but yeah, it should be good for game anyhow. Yeah, hopefully this is useful. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.